So coming off the bye, obviously don't have a whole lot in-house stuff. Just moving forward to the University of Idaho. It's clearly an interesting weekend in the Big Sky Conference, and I think that was one of the things that we talked with our guys about yesterday before practice. Was, hey, if you guys, lessons learned from the bye week. If you are prepared and you bring your edge competitively, you can beat anybody. And if you are not prepared and you do not have your competitive edge, you can get beat by anybody. And whether that's what happened in Missoula or what happened down in Flagstaff, I think those were both equally surprising in my mind. But now we've got our focus squarely on the University of Idaho, and I think that's an important message to take away. They did not have their competitive edge in Pocatello. They gave up a ton of yards and a lot of explosive plays to a very good outfit. I think that ISU's playing with a lot of confidence. They've got a lot of weapons on offense. And I think that, there was a little mix and match when they tried to play man-to-man, gave up some big plays, they got into some zone, then they were running the ball on them, and so it was kind of a catch-22. But I know, Coach Petrino and his staff are veteran group of guys, coached a lot of football, and will have their guys ready. And one of the things I did tell them is, hey, fellas, let's go down the list here. This game is an important game to the University of Idaho, and in particular to Paul Petrino, who's a Helena, Montana native, and as a Carroll College grad, Chris Sinkovich, Carroll College grad, Troy Purcell, Carroll College grad, Helena native, also a former Bozeman High coach. He's got guys on this team that he coached and won a couple state championships with. Bresky and Smith, two University of Montana guys, and Brad Daly, of course, All-American and Hall of Famer here, or will be at some point in time, Bobby Daly rather, as their linebackers coach. And so there's a huge group of guys there that get, even though there isn't a lot of recent history with this rivalry, that there is a rivalry there, and this is a big game for them from the standpoint it's a little bit of a homecoming deal. And it's a big game for us because it's the next opportunity we have to compete. We are both 1-1 in Big Sky Conference play, so it's a level playing field in that regard. And I think that it's going to be an interesting game. It's a matchup that I think has a lot of intrigue. You kind of have the offensive side of the ball for Idaho, where I think Mason Petrino has done a really nice job of operating their offense. But then you have the Richardson kid who has a different skill set and really has a strong arm and can maybe do some things that Mason can't in the passing game. And so they've kind of, they've got a little bit of a yin and yang there. I think the guy that makes their offense go when they get him going is the Saunders guy. I mean, I think the tailback, number 21, he is a big physical downhill back, 230-pound kid, good inside zone runner. They've got a couple guys on the O-line, number 74 in particular. I think he might be one of the better offensive linemen in our league. And so I think if you go position by position, you could say, okay, the tailback could probably be categorized as one of the better guys in our league. The right guard, actually strong side, quick side team, so depending on where he lines, but 74, probably one of the better offensive linemen in our league. As far as productivity goes, the Unger kid is as productive a receiver as there is in this league. They've got 88 that can stretch the field. I think it's just an interesting deal. It's not an outfit that's void of talent. I think they just haven't found their rhythm consistently, and I think that's something they're searching for on the offensive side of the ball. Defensively, again, you kind of go by position. I think the Hall kid from Chugiak, Alaska, is as productive as an inside linebacker is in this league. Okay, Caden Ellis is as good a player, period, as there is in this league. Turn the tape on if you don't believe me. Okay, and then you've got his brother Christian, who when they move him around can make some really good things happen. They've got 93 and 18 or other guys that they play inside. Their defensive line is not really big, but it's very active and athletic. And so I think personnel-wise, you look at it and you go, okay, they have some elite players. It just, for whatever reason, it hasn't quite come together for them. And then you look at the special team side, I think they've got one of the better punters, maybe in the country, in the Coffee Kid. And so it's not like they're void of talent. They have good players. And when they've played together, they've played really well at times. I think the Fresno game, that was a kind of an anomaly in my mind. It was a Murphy's Law game. Everything that could go wrong went wrong for them, got away from them early. Similar type of type of game at Davis. They had some things that just didn't go right for them early in the game and kind of got away from them. And then, Idaho State was a different deal too. And so I think it's a dangerous outfit. I think it's kind of a team that's going to come in here with a lot of motivation and has talent and is dangerous. Very, very talented group, I think, overall, and they just need to put the pieces together. So that's kind of my assessment of the Idaho crew, and be happy to take any questions.
This was your first game as the coach here, was against them a couple years ago, and you guys certainly went toe-to-toe with them, when they were at FBS at the time, I guess. Do they look any different, or how can you compare them now to how they looked then?
You know, some of the guys are the same guys.
Yeah.
And so that, you know, Ellis and Saunders and those type of, obviously they had a different quarterback, and he was a very productive quarterback for them. I mean, I think they were a 9-win bowl win team that year. They beat Colorado State in a bowl game that year. And that was kind of a high water mark, at least up to this point, for Coach Petrino and that crew. I mean, I think that was an outstanding coaching job to do what he did there with some of the struggles that they've had, and, you know, being in the Sun Belt, not really having regional rivalries and those types of things. And so, you know, I think there's maybe they had a safety that was a real problem that year. So that was one guy that definitely was different. But, you know, I mean, I think that stylistically on offense, they're similar. Defensively, they're not pressuring quite as much. I don't know that they have to, because they do have a 4 down front that can get after the quarterback pretty well. And, you know, it's kind of been, when they played zone, they've made teams earn it a little bit more maybe. But I don't know that there's a lot of similarities. I mean, 2 years is a long time in this business. And they've gone through some interesting things there at the University of Idaho. I mean, there's really no blueprint for what they've done. Nobody's ever done what they're doing right now, which is coming back down a level. A lot of teams have bumped up, where you're kind of in that transitional mode where you're getting from 63 to 85 scholarships. Well, it's really hard. I mean, I don't even know what those conversations were like. You know, like, I mean, are you going, okay, hey, we're 2 years, we're going to be going down, and, you know, next year we're going to put you on this much scholarship, the next year we're going to put you on this much. I mean, can you imagine, you know, recruiting a kid and saying it's 85 and it's all fulls, and now we're adjusting down. And so I think that's one of the things that you're seeing, is that it's been a difficult transition to try to get down to 63 so that they could come right in the Big Sky and be in a position where they could compete for postseason. And I think over time it'll level out, and Coach Petrino and his staff will do a really good job there. I mean, I think there's a lot of history and tradition of Idaho being an excellent Big Sky team. And I'm excited that they're back in the league. I mean, I just think you know, I would love to play Idaho every year. I would love to play Eastern every year. Clearly we're going to play Montana every year. And I think that if you were to ask Idaho State and Montana State and Idaho, they would love to do the same thing. And so hopefully we can get to a point in time where we're doing that.
How much different does this program and your team now feel in 2016, like the progress that you've made?
You know, I mean, it's interesting, because I think we're a more well-rounded team, but we had some really good players on that team. You know, I mean, JP was a really good offensive lineman, allowed us to do some different things. You look at Gunner and Chad, and those guys brought a lot of leadership, and so we're in some ways we're a younger team still. You know, which is kind of interesting to say that 2 years later you're still a pretty young team. We played 13 true freshmen that year, and those guys are now juniors, and so we're starting to see, you know, our classes grow. And you know, I don't know. I mean, it's every year's a different experiment, and then you throw in things like, you know, you know, situations like what happened with Chris, that changes the dynamic, not just in terms of what you're thinking structurally, but in the locker room too. And there's always going to be interesting things. I mean, I tell our guys that all the time. Like this, you know, we get to the end of the year and you say, okay, this is Team 1. This is the last time that you're ever going to be. This is Team 121's last go around. Like, think about that. This is going to be totally different a year from now, and it is. I mean, it's like a huge social experiment. You just kind of throw kids from all over the country in, and you shake it up and see where it lands. And so I think football, probably more than a lot of sports, is just very, very interesting that way in terms of the way the chemistry comes together. I think basketball, college basketball today is like that too. I mean, you could probably go out and have one guy the same on the roster from one year to the other. And so what goes on in the locker room and how kids buy into the culture and the chemistry of the group is almost as important as the talent that you have.
What is your relationship like with Troy Purcell? Do you know him?
I know him in passing. You know, when I first got here, of course, my son was getting ready to go to school there, so I had some conversations. I didn't know. I think he knew that he was planning on making this move, but I didn't know that at the time. I think we were recruiting Baloo Chapman. Like I said, my son was getting ready to go to Bozeman High, and I wanted to make sure that he was doing the off-season program or whatever Coach Purcell wanted him to do there. And so, you know, got to know him a little bit there. You know, clearly respect the job that he did at Bozeman High over the time that he was here. And so I think he's, you know, the guys that played for him that are in our program really think highly of him, and I think that's all you need to know about a coach, is how his players feel about him.
What is that transition from high school to college from a coaching perspective?
You know, I did it a long time ago, and I didn't go into being a position coach. I was a 31-year-old GA at Utah State University, and I think at first you think you're going to get, you know, like you're going to crack the code here. You're going to get all the answers because you're going to Division I football. And after a while you realize that, hey, it's about relationships and your ability to teach and convey the message. And most of the time I think high school coaches are actually ahead of a lot of college coaches in those regards, because that's all they've done. They've had to develop relationships with kids. They've had to teach them, regardless of their ability level, to whether you're teaching them math or science or PE or football, you've got to be a teacher, and I'm sure Troy does a really good job at that.
There's 4 players from Idaho on this team. You and Byron's connections to Idaho, how important is that as a recruiting territory?
Well, I think Boise in particular has been something that's been good to us. We dabble a little bit up in North Idaho and try to get a guy or two here out of that area if we can. We kind of have Spokane and North Idaho. That's kind of one area for us, and then Boise. I think regionally it makes a lot of sense. The problem is, and this is just as honest as I can be, it's a 7-hour drive. There's no easy way to get to Boise. If we had a flight, I think it'd make all the difference. But you got to go through Salt Lake or Denver if you want to go to Boise. So that's one thing that probably hurts us a little bit. It's actually shorter to drive to Moscow, Idaho from Boise than it is to Bozeman. And so that's something, you do the old string test sometimes, and that's something that comes into play. But I do think that we have an attractive product here. I think the football environment coupled with the academic environment and the community of Bozeman, the things that we sell in recruiting by and large, I think resonates really well in the Boise area, because that's kind of a really big Bozeman. Everybody's into the mountain biking and the outdoors and going up to Bogus and going skiing. So there's a lot of similarities in terms of the lifestyle. And I think that, certainly our ties to southeast Idaho or southwestern Idaho with Matt playing there and Byron playing there and myself coaching there, that helps. We have good relationships there. My brother's a high school teacher and coach, and we know a lot of people there, and I think that helps because again, it's about relationships. And so I think it's an important area. I would love to be able to take 2 to 3 guys out of the state of Idaho every year. But it's becoming more and more competitive because I think Fennessy's done a really nice job at Idaho State. Coach Petrino's going to have to recruit in-state more, and I think you can see that already happening. And then you're going to have Boise. You're going to fight with them a little bit, and so and then even I see what is it, Wendell or somebody's got an offensive lineman that's already committed to the University of Washington. So those ties there. If there's a really superior player there in the state, they're going to find him, and they're going to try to snatch him up. And then now you start to kind of weed it down. It's like not a lot of people come into Montana to recruit Montana kids because Montana and Montana State are going to fight it out for those FCS type of kids, and it's probably not a wise use of your resources to come over here because there's such strong ties to those 2 schools. And I think you might start to see that happen in Idaho. North Idaho should belong to the University of Idaho. They should be able to get the guys they want out of Coeur d'Alene and Lewiston and Moscow and Sandpoint, and then Idaho State should do the same thing in Pocatello and Idaho Falls, and then you should see them battling it out in the Boise area for the guys that aren't Mountain West type players. And so I think it's going to get more difficult for us to compete because now we've got 2 teams that are fighting for the same type of athlete that we're looking for.
Did you end up making it down to the Hawks game Friday?
I did.
And so what did you see out of some of those commits and recruits that are on Bozeman?
Well, I can't comment on any of the commits or recruits. I thought it was, I thought I think Bozeman has a really nice team. That was what I'd say. I think it was, hard-fought game through the first half, and then, that play at the end of the first half really turned the tide. And I think Bozeman is the class of the AA right now, and it'll be interesting to see how things go down the stretch. If they stay healthy, not to jinx Coach Weshy, but they look pretty strong on Friday.